So Bernie Sanders has easily won the Nevada caucus on Saturday. And whatever you think about the importance of the Nevada caucus in terms of what does it mean for the future of the primary, what does it mean for the future of these candidates, it was a clear and decisive victory for Bernie Sanders. Bernie came away with the victory with 96% reporting. Bernie had 47% of the vote as of about a half hour ago, got 13 delegates. Biden got about 20% of the vote and 2 delegates, while Mayor Pete Buttigieg got the last single delegate with 14% of the vote. This is, by the way, a good example of how you can get the majority of the delegates without the majority of the vote. Bernie got 46% of the vote, but ended up with about 81% of the delegates. We've talked about that before. I'm sure we'll talk about it again. But what I want to focus in on is the way that MSNBC and other establishment media reported on Bernie's win. You would have thought they were coming to you with the tragic news of a terrorist attack. You would have thought from the tone, tenor, and analogies that were used on MSNBC, and including by some sort of center-left establishment types on CNN, you would have thought they were commenting on the tragic death of 1,000 children rather than the victory of a progressive Democratic candidate who happens to be Jewish, and that'll be relevant as well. I've said before, MSNBC is more like Fox News than you might think. They are both huge corporate profit-driven media channels. One is radically and cartoonishly right-wing editorially. The other, MSNBC, is establishment Democratic, or you could call it center-left, period. They have many of the same motivations, Fox News and MSNBC. They have many of the same structural characteristics. Check out some of these absolutely wild reactions on MSNBC to Bernie Sanders' win. First is Chris Matthews equating Bernie Sanders' win in Nevada to the Nazi invasion of France.
I was reading last night, Brian, I know you're a history guy too. I'm reading last night about the fall of France in the summer of 1940. And the general, Renault, calls up Churchill and says, it's over. And Churchill said, how can it be? You got the greatest army in Europe. How can it be over? He said, it's over. So I had that suppressed feeling. I can't be as wild as Carville, but he is damn smart. And I think he's damn right on this one. Joy.
The number of times that Jewish Bernie Sanders is being compared or likened in some way, shape, or form to Nazis on MSNBC is starting to become a concerning number. Nazis killed family members of Bernie Sanders. MSNBC has at least twice, if not more, made references to Nazis in talking about Bernie or Bernie supporters. A Jewish man wins the Nevada Democratic caucus, and Chris Matthews thinks that's kind of like when Nazis stormed France. Something is very wrong here. And whatever your opinion is about Bernie's Medicare for All plan, right? That's not what this is about. This is too far. There are now countless calls for Chris Matthews to resign from MSNBC. I wouldn't hold my breath. But the insanity of Chris Matthews equating the win by a Jewish candidate to Nazis invading France is stunning. Next example from MSNBC's coverage of Bernie's win in Nevada. Here's Brian Williams saying they might kill Bernie. What is he even talking about?
And the point Chris made that they're going to kill him, but they may not stop him. Come Monday, they're going to kill him. They may not stop him.
It's true.
What on earth is Brian Williams talking about? And what is the prudency of starting to allude to wanting to kill a candidate who will no doubt, if he is the nominee, partially because of his ideology, partially because of his Jewish heritage, will be extraordinarily targeted by very violent factions of the political world. Here is example number 3, Chris Jansing, an MSNBC reporter, with an audible, dramatic sigh of disdain as she realizes that at her particular caucus location, Bernie has the lion's share of support. Listen to that sigh.
That these, again, are people who work on the Strip within 2.5 miles of the Bellagio, largely people of color. Of those, the majority are Latino, and they are clearly, at least from eyeballing it, strongly in favor of Bernie Sanders, with Joe Biden coming in second.
And I could do more and more of these. I could do 5 or 10 minutes of highlights of, Joy Reid making absolutely no sense with her establishment theatrics. But this is what we're seeing. And the reason we're seeing it is it's because of the fear that establishment center-left media has if Bernie Sanders were to be president, even if Bernie Sanders were to be nominee. If it's Trump who's the president, center-left obviously is opposed to Donald Trump. You've got a clear and concise and narrow, direct path as to what your editorial policy will be for maximum profit. It's all very cut and dry. If you have a center-left nominee like Biden or Buttigieg, 2020 version of Buttigieg, 2018 Buttigieg was much more like Bernie, but if you have 2020 Buttigieg or Amy Klobuchar, somebody like that, Bloomberg, it's very clear what you do. You support them, and they are not really going to do anything to radically challenge your place of privilege in society and in the economy. So that's very clear. What does the establishment center-left media do? What do these bloggers and people like, Jennifer Rubin and others, what do they do if you have Bernie Sanders, the nominee, or even Elizabeth Warren, the nominee? What do they do throughout the general election? What do they do if someone like Bernie or Warren were to become president of the United States? I actually don't know the answer. We're on the left, so we're against the right, but we also don't want the progressive left. What do? They are seeing the potential crumbling of the entire infrastructure that supports their model could crumble, and they know it. So the Democratic establishment knows it. The center-left legacy media know it. They don't know how to position themselves. I anticipate it will get even weirder just during what's remaining in the primary. And then once we get to the general election, it's going to be an absolute madhouse. We are starting to see the preview here. One of our sponsors today is Vincero Watches, giving you 15% off your entire order when you go to davidpakman.com/watch. Don't pay thousands of dollars for a high quality watch that looks great, because you don't have to. All of Vincero's watches are made with high-end materials, masterfully built, and they look like something you'd spend a ton of money on. But every Vincero watch ranges from about $150 to $300. I went over to their website and picked out the Bellwether in silver and white. Really nice, elegant look. It's a chronograph style. Wore it to a gala over the weekend. And a lot of people asked me, where's the watch from? Really, really great look. Totally different. They also sent me the Altitude in matte black and red. A much more rugged view of what a watch can look like. Really like it as well as the athletic strap. It's a new year. It's a new decade. It's time to reestablish your style, add something new to your look, and a high quality watch is the perfect way to do that. You can get 15% off Vincero's entire collection when you go to davidpakman.com/watch.